right. Welcome to the grand Stephen King Captain Tripp Spectacular Special of the Nightmares podcast. So I'm just curious of the three of us here who actually got that Captain Tripp's reference.
I sure as hell didn't.
Nobody's a real Stephen King fan.
Did you just shame me, sir, into not being a Stephen King fan?
Yeah,
I never claimed to be a real Stephen King fan. I just like some of his movies and the Maximum Overdrive trailer.
No, Captain Tripp is the virus that wiped everybody out at the beginning of The Stand.
Oh wow!
That's a good you would win in a bar trivia contest, sir, but that is about it.
Actually, I literally just remembered this when Zach and I saw Bruce Campbell at Music Box a couple years ago. He was hosting like this trivia game show type thing.
That was fun.
And there was a round that was open to really anybody, I think, and he was naming a monster from a Stephen King book, and you had to guess what book it was from. And so it was like Killer Car, answers Christine. Killer Dog, Cujo. Killer Virus. Nobody got it. And I had my hand up. I was too far away from him for him to see me. Nobody got it, but it was The Stand.
Nice. So, hey Brennan, you want to say
though, but
it is, but when you're specifically talking about Stephen King, there's really only one.
What about
I think that would be cell phones. Was that really a virus though?
I mean, it was kind of a virus.
But was it like an actual? I don't want to call it bacteria, because bacteria and viruses are completely different things.
They really are.
They are. Let's not get into a science debate. Hey, Brendan, you wanna share who's hanging out with us?
Welcome back to the podcast, Rob Binney of Cucurbitophobia.
Yep.
Yes,
that's it. You got it. You nailed it.
Holy crap!
God, I love watching Brandon become like a hooked on phonics person every time he tries to pronounce your damn name. It's one of the very small joys of my life.
We all just sit here in anticipation, just like, is he gonna get it? Is he gonna get it? Is he gonna? He got it!
So by the way, for our whole audience and everything else, Rob specifically requested if we ever did a Stephen King one, he's like, I got to be in on that. So we actually said hell yeah to that. And then, and obviously something I want to announce publicly, we did talk about a little bit beforehand, but Rob has been a tremendous supporter of the Midwest Horror Network on Facebook and in other media sources. You've been sharing all of our stuff. I try to share it as much as I can, but you are collectively kicking all of our asses when it comes to sharing our own content. So I really, from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure I speak for Brandon, Zach, and David, unfortunately, who is not here, that we really thank you for being a supporter and a fan of this podcast and this network. So yeah, brother, at the bottom of my heart, thank you very much, man.
You're very welcome, and thank you for inviting me back again. It's really cool to discuss horror and anything related to horror fiction, especially Stephen King, with anyone. So I'm totally appreciative of that.
Absolutely, brother. And then, so Brandon and I had a quick chat before this podcast, and we made a determination. And actually, it was a rule more for me than it was for anybody else. We're not going to be basic with this conversation. So we're all gonna say that It Chapter 1 was great. The Shining is great. It Chapter 2 is questionable. And we're gonna leave those movies over there, because everybody talks about those movies. Everybody talks about them constantly when it comes to the Stephen King list. I am 100% guilty of this. I'm the first person to admit that I am very guilty of this. So we're gonna keep those movies off the table. I'm sure we all agree that those are awesome, and I'm sure Rob, you would agree as well, that is the case.
Oh yes.
So
yeah, those are all great. I mean, I'm personally one that has a soft spot for the originals of the It miniseries, because I mean, Tim Curry's character playing Pennywise was just brilliant and pure genius. But I also thought that the modern takes of those were good. So leaving it at that, I think that's the best way to summarize it.
I think I'm
absolutely.
Both It chapters. Not so much the second one, but it's still a good movie. I don't hate it like some people.
I don't hate it. It just, if they didn't try to make it so comedy-like,
I'm not going to disagree with that at all. But
I'm sure there's an edit of it Chapter 2 that I love out there. It's just not the edit we got.
I got you. And dude, I said this one phrase, and this pretty much encapsulates my opinion about Chapter 2. The quality of acting and the amazing casting almost forgives the horrible CGI and special effects of that movie.
I'm not going to talk about this.
Very good point.
So
I feel
almost
like only
forgives
saying
it.
that because he himself is an actor. But we said we're not going to talk about it Chapter 2, so
Why'd you got to bring that up, Brandon? I don't know how I feel about that. I feel personally attacked. I feel triggered.
It was a personal attack.
Triggered. So now we're going to talk about Maximum Overdrive, of course, because we can't do that, because that's our favorite. That's everybody's favorite, right?
That's one of the few Stephen King movies, to be honest with you, that I didn't watch all the way through. That's one of the movies that I saw parts of when I was younger, but it was one of those that I just never got around to watching the whole thing. So I'm going to be completely blunt and say that's one of the movies that is still on my list that I have to catch of the Stephen King golden age period.
I'm not going to watch it just because I don't want the trailer to be ruined, because I love the trailer so much that I don't want them to be ruined.
So I'm pretty much the only one of the four of us that's actually seen all of Maximum Overdrive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It is not the trailer. Stephen King does have a cameo in the beginning. He is not as prevalent throughout the movie as you would believe from the trailer.
Is he intaking cocaine at the time?
No. He is actually withdrawing money from an ATM.
Well, we know what the money was going to be used for.
Yeah.
So
that tends to be the behavior of a coke addict, removing
little
money from an ATM.
So he's taking money from an ATM, and the little display on it says asshole on it, and he just kind of calls to his wife, "Honey, this ATM machine just called me an asshole."
Because Stephen King's acting is just quality. When you want an actor, you call Stephen King because he knows what the hell he's talking about.
But yeah, so at the beginning, basically you have all these machines coming to life, killing people. And after that, it ends up in the truck stop where the movie takes place at. And once you get to the truck stop, the movie just stops dead. Like it's no longer fun bad. It's just
bad.
So in other words, the first 10 to 15 minutes are great, and then everything just comes to a screeching halt.
Pretty much. Once you get to the truck stop, you maybe stick around long enough to see the Green Goblin truck, because the Green Goblin truck does look cool. And then once you see what you came for, you can pretty much turn it off.
Chug your drink and be like, all right, that was fun.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair
it's based
enough.
on a short story that he wrote called Trucks, which is actually as bizarre and nonsensical as the concept is of a meteor bringing machines to life and trucks trying to kill people at a truck stop. It is an effectively enough written short story, which leads to something else that Mark and I were talking about. And when I told him Stephen King is the master of writing stories that when you describe them to your friend, you immediately follow your description with, it's a lot cooler when you actually read it for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
That's Stephen King in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, one of my personal favorites out of the bunch, and I'm not sure if you've seen it, but Sometimes They Come Back is probably one of my favorites of his.
I've actually never seen the movie. I've read the short story, but I never saw the movie.
That's a really good one. It starts off with Jim Norman's a young boy with his brother Wayne that gets stabbed by these greasers under this trestle where this train comes and then suddenly wipes out the greasers in their car. Like they sort of park on the tracks, they fight with the brothers and they stab Wayne, and Jim runs for his life, and then the greasers are trapped on the tracks while the train comes and kills them. Fast forward to contemporary times, Jim is a school teacher, and then he finds that one of the greasers comes back to life, Robert, and suddenly kids in the class start disappearing and getting murdered. And then every time a student gets murdered, another greaser from the past that murdered his brother comes back and ends up in that same seat in the classroom. It's very, very creepy concept, but it's really cool.
Yeah. A life for a life.
And they have this really funny laugh, this very comical, like really loud, laughs and obnoxious. And when you see it, you're just you want to punch them, but you're also creeped out by them too.
That makes me happy. I don't know why it makes me happy, but it makes me happy. That's a lot of fun. That's a lot
Did
of
you
fun.
ever see either of the sequels?
Of which one?
There were two made-for-TV sequels. Sometimes they come back. Nobody ever talks about them.
No, I have not seen those.
I've never seen them. I've never met anybody else who's seen them. So it's since you brought up the first one, I just have to know if you've seen them.
I'd be interesting to see how they are though, if they're well executed or if they're just comically bad, just to have that train wreck factor in, pun intended.
I'm gonna put my money on train wreck bad.
The second one, at least based on the poster I saw, looked like it could be connected to the first one. And then from the little bit that I've seen and heard about the third one, just from reading about it, I don't necessarily believe the third one has any kind of connection to anything from the first one whatsoever. Kind of like how Lawnmower Man 2 is so far removed from the original short story of Lawnmower Man.
Oh man,
Jesus.
He's just removed from the short story completely.
Well, I mean, the first one, even though King did sue to have his name taken off of it, the first one did still have a lawnmower running over somebody. And allegedly, the name of the company in the movie is named after the pagan god from the short story, but I have not really confirmed that myself yet.
Nice.
I saw the first Lawnmower Man, loved it. I mean, I watched it when I was really young, and I love, even to this day when I watched it again recently, how primitive the special effects are, but it's just perfect for how it is. It's not overdone, and the graphic scenes just they jump out right at you.
It's a movie that works for everything that it has in itself. And it's just ridiculous fun is the best way to describe it.
Isn't that kind of what we're all about, is ridiculous fun, being fans of this genre?
I mean, if you're a Stephen King movie fan, yeah, probably.
That's
like 90% of his movies.
So let's let's do what we've done before in the past. Let's go down the roster with everybody, and obviously Rob being our guest. Let's talk about our favorites. We normally go like a treasel, but Rob, you can go as expansive as you like, and then we'll talk about it.
If I would give a short list, I would say Pet Sematary is probably number one, the original, because I have not seen the remake. But Pet Sematary is up there. I love Carrie. I love Christine, The Shining. I haven't seen Salem's Lot, but I have read the book, and I love the book because I think that's one of his best. I also think there's a miniseries I've seen called Storm of the Century that was brilliant back in the 90s. So, yeah, those are some of my top ones that he has. And if there's any I've missed or that I haven't mentioned yet, I'll certainly get back to them. But Pet Sematary was one of the few Stephen King movies that when I saw it legit gave me nightmares. I saw it when I was about 11 years old. And at that time, I was still very new to horror at that age, but when I saw it, it literally gave me the shivers right up to the very end scene when Rachel stabs him, like right at the very end, and he's like, no, and the lights go out. That just sent the chills right down my spine.
Nice. Gotta love that. I love the, I don't know if you know a little fun trivia fact. I don't know if you know that Brian De Palma and George Lucas were casting Star Wars and Carrie at the same time, and they actually had the same casting call. So they were literally doing it at the same time. They were casting people for Carrie, and then they were also auditioning people for Star Wars right at the same time they were touring it. Also because George Lucas doesn't talk and Brian De Palma does, so they figured that they would just join forces, and then Harrison Ford and Brian De Palma could kind of explain what Star Wars was all about. But yeah, they shared an audition space for those two movies.
I mean, De Palma, Lucas, Spielberg, Scorsese, Coppola, all those directors were friends. So
until the fiasco that was the Twilight Zone movie.
That was Spielberg and Landis. Landis was never really part of that.
That group. I don't hear them talk about each other all that much anymore. I remember like watching documentaries about them before that movie, and then they don't really talk about much about each other now. I may be wrong. I mean, this is just an observation that
I mean, there was a Brian De Palma documentary not too long ago, and the way he spoke, it sounded like they still keep in contact. There may have actually been a somewhat recentish picture of them together in that movie, so I could be remembering wrong.
Fair enough. Yeah, there was a. I love how Rob's like, ooh, that movie, the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah, I saw that one also when I was really young too. I mean, I loved how when I was younger I enjoyed it and appreciated it for what it was, and it wasn't until I was older that I realized that the guy Vic Morrow actually died during the making of the movie. When there was a scene that was omitted where he was supposed to be rescued from Vietnam, and the helicopter came down too low and it decapitated him.
Yeah,
along with the two kids.
Yeah, terrible.
Which is fucking crazy. It's always interesting to hear about those behind the scenes stories. But I think
when you actually go into, I really don't like talking about it that much, but when you really look at everything that actually happened that night, it was like it goes beyond accident into just outright disaster. Like it is a disaster in every single way.
Yeah,
it's a good class on what not to do. In a lot of cases,
absolutely.
Certain safety regulations, there's a lot of unfortunate circumstances, but it also goes into certain safety regulations, underage actors, and it goes into a lot of lessons about what not to do. I think it's a good lesson that any filmmaker should know about.
Oh, of course.
But Pet Sematary. So you have not seen the remake. Have you seen Pet Sematary 2 ever?
I have not seen the sequel. I mean, I never bothered to go into the sequel because I thought the first one was so good on its own that I felt that as a standalone it was perfect. But then when I read a synopsis of the sequel, I was just like, nah, not really. I'd rather grace the original and view that as like sacred ground and just skip the sequel.
I'll be honest. I probably have the single most controversial opinion on the Pet Sematary movies. The first one, so you saw it when you were younger, you said, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I actually didn't see it until I was in high school, and there are a lot of really good shots. There are a lot of really good moments in it, but for me, it's the child actors just kept taking me out of it, and I just thought it was a very miscast movie, especially with Ed Gwynn as the old man. Which, I mean, when you've watched South Park as long as I have, and you've seen that character spoofed so many times,
yeah,
I can't take him seriously ever.
I guess from that perspective, I guess it makes sense, especially after you watch a movie like My Cousin Vinny, and you see him as the judge, and then you go back to that, you're like, oh man, it's etched in your mind for good.
I've tried revisiting it a few times over the years, but it's just like it starts off okay, but it always gets to the point where the child actors is great against my ears so much that I have to turn it off.
Okay.
So when I saw the remake, which everybody seems to despise the remake, and I can understand somebody not liking it, but like some of these reviews I see, you'd think this movie was bringing about the end of the world. Which is like, okay, you don't like it, but yeesh, there are worse movies out there.
I know some people just don't like remakes, period. And I'm not one of those people that would bash a remake out of nowhere. I first want to see it for myself and judge it based on the content and how the story is executed. I know some folks just love to, take the opportunity to say, it's not the original, I'm never going to see it. And then if they do see it, they're going to have that narrow mind where they go, nope, it's not the original, it sucks. The end.
What, Rob? Rob, you wanna go and watch something with no prejudgment and then base it on its own merit by itself? How dare you, sir? What is that blasphemy, sir? How dare you? Need to prejudge something before you walk in and then make a declarative opinion with never seeing the movie before. Don't you know how modern times work?
Yep. The internet has to hate it, and if the internet hates it, you better hate it.
There's a certain story beat in the remake that has a complete 180 from the original and the book. So I'm sure if like anybody that's an absolute diehard purist, that probably set them off. But no, and other than a few moments of let's call it questionable CGI. And I thought the lead actor was really good, but there was one moment where I'm just like, he seems like he's playing this a little more sinister than I think he would at this moment. And then the scene after that, he's okay again. So it's like, okay, that was an odd little performance choice right there. But yeah, I'd call it a decent movie. It was really well shot, and the sound design, like that's one movie where I will say, if you do see it, definitely try to see it with a surround sound setup, because it, just watching it with your TV speakers, it can't be the same movie. Like it really can't. Like even in the theater, I'm just like, they are really using all these speakers to their advantage. So I thought it was a overall well done movie. And then Pet Sematary 2, ridiculous, but it worked as a movie for me more than the first one.
Okay.
It is more of a horror comedy in some ways, especially with Clancy Brown as the somewhat villain. Which, I mean, who doesn't love Clancy Brown?
So I have a question, Brandon. Is it a horror comedy, or is it an accidental horror comedy? Because there is a difference. There are some that are actually meant to be horror comedies versus being unintentional horror comedies.
So based on the interview with Clancy Brown that's on the Blu-ray, I kind of got the vibe that it was written more on the serious side, but still had those elements of humor. But on set, they decided to bring out the comedy a little bit more.
Okay.
So I do think it's intentional. It was directed by the same woman who directed the original as well. And it's in the interview, Clancy Brown did ask her. He said he asked her why she's doing Pet Sematary 2, and she said it's the only thing I'm being offered. But even though it was one of those situations, I still feel like she brought a lot more to the movie than anybody else would have. So I do think it doesn't live up to the actual story of the original Pet Sematary. Probably not. Is it an enjoyable movie? Yeah, it actually is.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Because I gotta bring it up, man, because you have on one end Shaun of the Dead, and then on the other end you have The Happening. Both hilarious, but both hilarious for very different reasons.
What? Oh, yeah. No.
the very different reasons why those two movies are hilarious.
And then you have another one, Sleepwalkers, which was interesting to say the least.
I have never seen that one, actually.
Neither have I.
I saw that one when I was like 12 or 13. I was in like Channel 9, I think, and it was like an edited version, and it was bad. That's definitely one of his bad ones that I would not. You watch it once and you're just like, I want that hour and a half of my life back.
Dude, it's like when I saw The Langoliers on TV. That was that movie. That was an interesting one. I saw that one when I think I was like 13, and I'm like, this is. I mean, like it was enjoyable because it was enjoyable like in a mystery aspect, but like some of the things that were going on, like the discussions that were going on, like how they discovered they were there was because the soda was flat. Like, and they made such a fucking huge deal about how like the soda's flat. They're like that's how we know we're in a different dimension. It's because the soda is flat. What the fuck are
That's
you
hilarious.
talking about?
That's hilarious.
And then they came back and then like I remember very few things, like two guys got in a fight. The soda was flat. And at the beginning everyone disappeared that wasn't napping. And then they landed on this thing, and then they figured out that it's destroying into nothing. It's decrepiting into nothing. And then they said, all right, we got to get back on this plane. But then the fuel didn't work. It seemed like a very like the most arbitrary inconveniences about why this story had to go. It was entertaining for what it was. And then it got to the actual part where the monsters showed up. And then you went, wow, this is a made-for-TV movie. This, like, what in the God's holy shit made-for-TV sci-fi movie of the week bullshit is this? These fucking things came out of nowhere. They look like the honeycomb fucking monster like the furball fucking monster, like tearing up the fucking runway. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
It's a 1995 made for CG, made for TV.
CG.
That's amazing.
And then they flow,
That's the problem.
dude, and then like they get in the air and then they decide they're like, all right, well, like the only way for us to get out of this is for somebody to stay awake to fly the plane. And then the one guy says, I'm going to sacrifice myself. So he puts on the breathing mask, then drives the plane, and he looks at the sunlight, and he's like, the sun is beautiful, and then fucking disappears. And then that's the end of the fucking movie. And then they land the plane.
That's amazing.
And then like now in hindsight, I'm like, this is when Stephen King was doing a lot of blow. Like, I know this is when Stephen King was doing a lot of blow.
Yeah.
But it's certainly a memory. It is certainly a memory that I have.
Oh man.
But but in this assignment though, I did actually watch Firestarter last night.
That's another one I have to see. That's on my list. I have the DVD actually. I got it for Christmas in a box set that I was given, and I still have to watch it.
Okay, well, I'll give you my quick rundown with it. It is not perfect by any means. There are some. Zach and Brandon would have an aneurysm if they saw some of the ADR to film. Like there's moments when, you know, like when they show a wide shot of somebody and they're driving in a truck and the characters are in the truck, but the voiceover is still going. The truck passes by, the fucking voiceovers are still going, but no one's lips are moving inside the truck. So that kind of shit is going on in that movie.
That's amazing.
It was.
That would not have happened if they didn't fire John Carpenter.
Probably, along with everybody else. But besides that though, Drew Barrymore actually did a good job as a little girl. She did some really good acting. The rest of it was really good. The guy who plays the villain, not Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen's pretty great in it, but I think it's the guy who plays the villain from fucking Ghostbusters 2. Brandon, please correct.
Vigo the Carpathian.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. I may be wrong. I may very well be wrong. Please tell me what this. He's been in a bunch of movies, like a bunch of other movies. But he plays a really like. I think this is the most horrifying part of this movie. He gets really like a little too close to Drew Barrymore, and it made me uncomfortable. Like I know, but it made me uncomfortable as a 2020 person, not as a 1984 person. Like who would never see like this type of thing. But I'm like, this is a little peta creepy. But I think it came down to like there wasn't a lot of, he was a creepy character, but there wasn't a lot of development within him. Apparently through
Vigo.
It wasn't Vigo. But he's been in other shit. But I wish he was. That would have been amazing. But apparently he's like one of these like an African tribe person who believes if they kill somebody, they will absorb their power. Like, you know, some of them are cannibals, but like he believes if like I kill somebody, I'll absorb their power. So that's what he wants to do. Because apparently in this whole, so for anybody who hasn't seen it, apparently at the very beginning, there's a clinical trial for a serum that gives people supernatural abilities. Drew Barrymore's father is a psychic. He can control people's thoughts and make people do whatever the fuck he wants to do. And then Drew Barrymore can control fire and basically just produce fucking fire and higher temperatures whenever the fuck she feels like it. And the part that was good about this movie was the government conspiracy type things of the Men in Black, hunting down these people, and they have a secret organization of the government that runs these trials. And that's the part that was intriguing about the story is, the relationship between Drew Barrymore and her father was really good. And then the relationship she develops with the older guy is really good. And it ends up being this cool kind of story about government cover-ups and tests and things like that. But honestly, at the end of the day, it was a good movie. I did enjoy it. There's a whole thing at the end. It's a final showdown where Drew Barrymore blows up everything. It is certainly plagued by a 1984 movie running out of money. Towards the end, I go, well, that's where you ran out of money. Okay, I see you. But overall, very enjoyable experience. Definitely dug what they had to offer. Certainly by no means the worst of the Stephen King stuff. And I went back and saw some of the review scorings, and they were really low. And I'm like, it doesn't really deserve the kind of low rating. It's certainly not perfect by any means, but it's definitely good. And by the way, Zach, there's an older man who they kind of get taken in. Drew Barrymore and her dad gets taken into. He is your spirit animal. Because all these government guys fucking pull up on his driveway. This dude literally runs out with his gun. He's like, you guys need to get the fuck off my property. And he's like, no, we're just gonna take them and everything else. Is like, unless you got a warrant, I'm not gonna let them go. And he's like, no, we don't have a warrant. He's like, oh really? It's like, oh, did I wake up in Russia this morning? Because in case this is still the fucking United States, you ain't taking these fucking people off my goddamn property. And I'm like, and like literally after they all get blown up, there's a whole thing with Drew Barrymore where she takes a whole bunch of them out. He's like, what did you want me to do? You want me to be a good little Nazi and fucking let the government people take those people away? Fuck that. And I'm like, oh, like that's Zach's grandpa. But overall, I do recommend it. Like, definitely pick it up. It's a fun like Sunday afternoon watch. It's not as horror oriented, but it has horror elements within it. Like when she burns up people, she really fucking burns people alive.
Nice.
But it has that kind of like government conspiracy kind of flair to it.
Okay.
Definitely of the Reaganism, Cold Era kind of, Cold War kind of thing. But definitely enjoyable. Really do recommend it.
Now, another film that, since you mentioned that, the Cold War era, and then even Martin Sheen that you brought up ago, let's talk about The Dead Zone.
Yes.
That's a great one.
I wanted to show Zach The Dead Zone before we did this, but we just couldn't. Somehow time got away from us.
I got distracted with predator hunting grounds. I've been ripping people's heads off all weekend. It's great. I recommend it.
Cool. Yeah,
Good
Dead
for your
Zone was
sanity.
great. I've seen that movie several times, and it just how it's executed with Christopher Walken's character it's great, and how Martin Sheen plays the great evil politician. Once he shakes his hand, and then he sees into the future how he's going to just unleash nuclear war. That just gives you the fucking chills.
Dead Zone's the one where what's it called? Christopher Walken kind of becomes psychic, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Seen it when I was a kid.
Okay.
It sounds like this is a similar vein to like those things, because Martin Sheen plays a similar character. Like I think he's been like secretly like working towards the West Wing, his role in the West Wing, as he got beefed up through the 80s playing politicians, because he's been playing politicians quite a lot, apparently even in 2 Stephen King movies.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the West Wing starring Martin Sheen's character from The Dead Zone?
Man.
That would be House of Cards.
You're not wrong.
I'm going to say 75% of the way there.
Another great scene that always sticks in my mind with The Dead Zone is when a child falls through the ice skating. Oh man, when I saw that when I was young, I was just like blown away how it would just, every time he would fall through the ice, I'd be like, no.
The one that always got me was when they're trying to track down that serial killer that's in the town, and then they finally figure out who it is, but as they're about to raid his house, that killer doesn't want to be taken alive. And it's like, he just sets up like these scissors pointing at him in his bathroom, and you don't see what he did to himself. You just see the aftermath of it. And it is brutal. And it's just like, what did you, like, it's like you see the beginning of it and you see the result of it. And whatever it is he did, whatever you imagine is probably way more bad than whatever actually did happen.
Yeah.
That was, even though it's a David Cronenberg movie who is no stranger to showing graphic gore and violence, I do think he was right to show a lot of restraint for The Dead Zone.
Yeah, it was very well executed. It was definitely more psychological, and I wouldn't say spiritual, but it had like that sort of blurred lines between supernormal and paranormal elements, that blended very well. And the gory aspects were done very sparingly, but very tastefully.
Yeah. You know what? And that's the thing I got to give Stephen King a lot of props for. For the most part, that's his MO. Like it's not necessarily relying on gore and harsh visuals. I mean, yeah, he has them for sure, but like most of this is about atmosphere and about, a feeling and about, tension and creating a world that you can live in, and that there is a lot of spiritual and a lot of supernatural that come into that. And it's more about what you don't see versus what you actually see with Stephen King, which I think it to varying degrees of success in his movies, but I think that's an overall tenet of Stephen King. It's about atmosphere. It's about a feeling that you get. I mean, my nana is like the biggest fan of his novels. Read every fucking thing that he's wrote, and that's always been her thing. Like she's always said that it's about atmosphere. It's about feeling a certain way and feeling uneasy and feeling that something is wrong in whatever world you're living in. And I think he does it pretty fucking well. Cocaine or not cocaine, it does it pretty fucking well either way.
Yeah. He definitely conveys a similar, I'd say he's like, I would say not watered down, but a definitely more modern take on someone like H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it also
I
goes
see a
back
lot
to
of
what, director
parallels.
said about Stephen King, and that's Stephen King doesn't write about a monster in a house. He writes about the people living in the house with the monster in it.
Yes.
It's always secondary. It's some funny, like I think that's always an interesting concept. I think the best kind of movies are the things that aren't those movies. And what I mean by that is like, like The Dark Knight. It's great because it's not a comic book movie. It's whatever else first. It's a crime drama first. Deadpool's a comedy first. The Casino Royale is a spy thriller versus a Bond movie. Like there's something first before it's whatever else. And Stephen King's always really good at making something first before it goes into whatever else it needs to get into.
Yeah. And his use of metaphor is brilliant. Like all the monsters represent some metaphor or some subliminal that relates to the characters or to maybe a reflection of what's going on in their mind versus what's going on in their society or, something along those lines.
No, you're absolutely 100% correct. Hey, and I don't want to stray too far away from sequels. Did you get a chance to see Dr. Sleep?
No, I haven't gotten to Dr. Sleep because I was intending on going to the movies, to see it when it was out, but then COVID hit and, it changed a lot of things. So there's a lot of things I haven't been able to do in the last couple of months since we've been under strict quarantine. It's literally, you can leave your house to buy groceries or you can leave to get gas or go to work if you're an essential employee, which I am not. I give music lessons and I tutor English, but I do that remotely, so I don't really have to leave, thank goodness. But, my girlfriend works in healthcare, so she is an essential worker, so she's always on the go and in the front line. So, some people can't be home, but when you are home, sometimes you get cabin fever because there's only so many movies you can watch, so many books you can read, so much music you can write before you just want to just go outside for a walk or just go drive to the park. But your parks are closed, so you really can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's literally, and I haven't seen the movie, but in a lot of ways it reminds me a little bit of The Stand because I've heard about the synopsis of The Stand and I'm like, it's like a more toned down version because this virus isn't killing people off like Ebola virus would if that came out, but it's still pretty fucking deadly to those who have compromised systems and to those who are young or those who are, in their 60s, 70s and above that, can't fight this off very quickly. So
yeah, like of all the things that they say makes you more at risk, my dad checks like 3 or 4 of those boxes. So it's just like, I don't want you going outside.
Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Stay in and don't take the gator out.
Yeah.
It's but it was good. It was probably one of my favorite movies of the last year. It is definitely worth a watch.
Now I have seen the original. I've seen the original Shining with Jack Nicholson, which is a classic, and I've also seen the Shining miniseries when they ran that in the '90s, like the 4-part, I think, on ABC. And it wasn't as scary. It was more dramatic and more like thriller, but it was more sad, and it goes deeper into the backstory of how the family, had their history and how they brought that, and their problems exploded once they were trapped in the house for the winter.
Well, yeah, that was his Stephen King's biggest complaint about I thought we did well. We're going this way. That was Stephen King's biggest complaint I heard in interviews was that they didn't go deep enough into the declining of the marriage and the alcoholism and the abuse of, the abuse stuff, and and all that, the history of all that, as much in the movie as Stephen King would have liked. It's more about, that story is way more about the destruction of a marriage and the ending of a marriage and the ending of a family, than it is about anything else. Like you were saying before, it's not about the monster, it's about the people that are around the monster. And that, I know that was Stephen King's biggest complaint about the movie, is they didn't go deep enough into those type of struggles. But yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
so Doctor Sleep's on my list.
It's good. It's very, very good.
One movie I loved by him is Misery. That
yes.
movie.
I actually I watched that last night in preparation for this, and still a really scary movie. People like to talk about toxic fandom today. Stephen King was taking it on for reals back then.
Way before the age of social media, and way before the age of YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and anything where you could find a platform where people could connect all around the world. I mean, this was in right in the heart of Gen X, where this was pre AOL. So yeah, it was all about fan letters and fan club days, where you were writing and waiting for months just to get a piece of anything that their biggest fan would able to submit to them, just like a hair strand or a nail clip or a piece of a page of a book, anyone autographed by their favorite author or actor or musician. That was the days of the fanatical fan club. We don't have that anymore, because you could just go on Google and just type someone in, boom, you see them, and all of a sudden you're in their virtual world.
Bam, there it is. What's something funny? I was actually going to say something to Brandon's point. That movie and Demolition Man are way more important now than they ever were in the past. They're way far more relatable than they ever were. Misery with its crazy fandom, and Demolition Man with its culture. God,
Demolition Man! I laughed my ass off throughout that movie.
It's a hilarious movie, but if society was run by Tumblr, that's where it would be. So I think those movies are probably more important now than they ever were. And like you were saying about Misery, I would put those, that'd be a hell of a double feature, actually. The movies that are more important now than they ever were. Demolition Man and Misery.
Oh, but when Annie walks in the room with a sledgehammer, you just know that there's trouble. There's trouble for Paul. Like, he's fucked. He's just trapped in the bed, and he's just gonna get his legs and he's smashed to bits.
Yeah, and she puts that wood between his ankles, and is like,
oh man.
I haven't been that uncomfortable since Casino Royale, with the Daniel Craig scene with the end of the rope. Have you seen Casino Royale, Rob?
Mm-mm.
There's a scene in that movie where the villain strips Bond naked and takes up one of those old wood wicker chairs, cuts out the seats so it's just a hole, takes an old, yep, that's where we're headed, Rob. Takes I can see his face. Takes an old sail, and actually a ship rope with the big ass knots on him, and goes whoop right underneath the chair.
Oh man! How?
Turn left and cough, Rob. That happened. That made everybody in the theater. I think I was like 14 when I saw that movie, and even I went, ooh, no.
We're gonna turn this into a one-upsmanship of painful scenes. I was actually watching a hockey comedy last night called Goon with Sean William Scott, and there's a scene where so he's basically this hockey player that's brought in specifically to start fights, and there's a scene where it's like the goalie for his team is like, for some reason, knocked away from the goal, and Sean William Scott finds himself in front of the goal, no protective gear. Opposing team just does this slap shot towards the goal. He blocks the puck with his face.
Oh no!
Fuck.
Yeah, and then he's like laying on the ground in front of the goal, puck right in front of his face, and the entire opposing team is trying to knock that puck in, and he's just getting he's getting hit with hockey sticks just left and right in the face.
Oh man.
Another person steps on his ankle with their ice skate. It is
Oh,
like for a
fuck.
comedy, it's just like this is hard to watch.
Dude,
Did he
it's like
live through that scene?
What's that?
Did he live through that scene, or did he die
Yeah.
through that scene? Because
He lived.
I mean, in real life, you're dead.
And
And
it's
one
like
blow with a puck, that
it's
could fracture
like-
your skull and get your brain, and you're fucking brain dead.
Yeah, it's like 10 seconds left on the timer, and then when the timer's done, all he can say is, "Did we win?" As they're just like carting him out on the stretcher.
I have so much mad respect for hockey players, man, because they're not maybe not that insane, but they're pretty fucking insane.
Oh
mean, like-
man, yeah, you've got to skate, and you've got to hit hard, and you've got to be tough, and you've got to deal with the cold, and you've got to be very flexible and agile, and you've got to be ready to hit a puck every time you get the puck, and you've got to fight. You know, when you get cornered and you get checked, you have to fight back.
There's a story.
I believe one of the Blackhawks players had a heart attack while playing once, recovered, then he's just like, "Can I go back in the game?" You just had a heart
Like,
attack.
no, fuck you,
Yeah,
no.
they had a seat. They had like the paddles, and they paddled his ass in there, dude. Like I remember there was the Boston Bruins and Blackhawks Stanley Cup series. One of the players got his teeth knocked out, and he went to go pick up his teeth with on the ice. One guy got his pancreas bruised and was bleeding internally, and he still played. And you have the basketball players that get a sprained ankle, and then they're out for the season.
Or you have Cutler, who gets a broken pinky and he can't play for the rest of his life.
Never mind.
Let's
not go there.
Level. It's a different level of toughness. I mean, but when you watch and think about this though, when you watch horror movies, you know, it makes you think when some people endure those scenes where they get their neck bitten by a vampire, or or they get their leg chewed off by a large rat, and they're still crawling and going through and fighting back. I think it shows individual resilience and toughness within each character. Some have it, some don't.
When you mentioned the giant rat, were you referencing the Graveyard Shift?
Yes, Graveyard Shift. Yes, I watched that recently. It was amazing, amazingly bad and funny and gory as fucking hell. I mean, that's probably one of his gorier movies I've seen.
Yeah,
gotta love that.
It's gross from what I remember. I was thinking about revisiting it, but then Scream Factory just announced that they're going to do a Blu-ray of it, so I'm going to hold off until that comes out to rewatch it. But yeah, that's definitely one of his grosser stories.
Yeah, it's different than the short story too. I know it's in his compilation Night Shift, and I've read the story, and the story is much shorter. The movie expands, and there's more characters and more depth, of course, and it's funnier. But the story itself is more gross and more grotesque. So I would read the story first, then see the movie and compare it. And of course, the movie's got that '80s quality to it.
I have a question. Has anybody ever seen, I don't know the name of it, but it's based on a short story and I think they've done a film or something of it. It's when the appliances come to life. The washing machine comes to life and starts eating people. It's based on a
washing machine or laundry press.
Laundry. I think it's a laundry press. I believe it's a laundry press. What's up, the Mangler? Have they done something like a visual sense of it?
The movie is fucking hilarious.
That would be starring Robert Englund.
You have a photographer named JJJ Pictureman.
That's the level of editing we're going with.
Because why the fuck not?
Buffalo Bill is an alcoholic. What's it called? Was he just an investigator?
I think he was a detective.
I couldn't remember if he was a detective or an inspector.
We mentioned Stephen King is the master of writing stories where you go, it's a lot cooler when you read it. The Mangler is the epitome of
that's like the pinnacle of it. Just holy shit, this movie is fucking ridiculous.
Well, dude, he has such a huge fan base. Do you think that he's sitting there and he's thinking how far can I take this bullshit? How ridiculous?
At least once.
How ridiculous can I make this, and still people will read it and gobble it up the same way? And I think that is the apex of everything. The laundry press or washer machine ate my sister, or something ridiculous. We've reached Goosebumps levels, gentlemen. That's Goosebumps levels of bullshit.
But no, I mean, but going back further, I mean, I read, for example, Salem's Lot. I've read that all the way through and digested it, and that's pure fucking blasphemy in so many areas. I mean, that's very vampiric, borderline satanic in certain areas, and that's probably one of the darkest novels I've read of his, from the earlier times. And to translate that to film, I think that's definitely one of his more primitive yet very chilling films that sets off in that small rural town where everybody's just has that very weird, eerie sort of aura about them, and yet there's just vampires everywhere.
Yeah, the 1979 Salem's Lot, also directed by Tobe Hooper, so he can direct Stephen King well.
Look,
not
The
just
Mangler was directed very well. It is an absolutely fantastic, grade A piece of cinema. You gotta watch it.
I'll take your word for
Go to
it.
your room.
You have now been kicked out of the podcast, sir. We're gonna have to ask you to leave. We're gonna have to ask you to. There's too much Stephen King cocaine being consumed here, so we're gonna have to ask you to step away. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I don't know. I have no idea.
I've always started the book and I've tried reading it like multiple times and I've really liked what I've read, but for some reason, that's the book that whenever I read it, something else happens in my life where I no longer have time to read.
That's
I'm
the
starting
worst.
to think the book may have a curse for me or something.
It's like me trying to finish Legends of Legaia.
But the 1979 TV movie or miniseries, whatever you want to call it, that's probably in my top 10, maybe even top 5 Stephen King movies. And I really like that. Like, it's 3 hours long, and the first hour, it's really an hour before you get any real vampire stuff, and even then, it's just sort of starts slowly. So that first hour, you're just spinning with the characters, and that's what I really like about it. Because then, when everything goes sideways, these people, you care about them, and it's for a 1970s made-for-TV movie. There is some creepy stuff, like the kid at the window.
Yeah.
It is my understanding that they definitely changed Kurt Barlow quite a lot for this version, and even though he's very much based off of the Nosferatu design, he's really creepy. James Mason is creepy. It's just like he's just one of those guys where it's just like something's off about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm actually wearing a Salem's Lot shirt right now.
Nice.
Barlow on it.
God, man.
Yeah, I really like it. I never saw the 2004 remake with Rob Lowe.
No, neither have I. But it looks interesting, and I check it out once I get that moment too.
And then there is going to be another remake coming out, and they just announced that Gary Doberman's going to be directing, which he wrote the screenplays for It and It Chapter 2. He was involved with the Swamp Thing TV series. I believe he wrote all 3 Annabelle movies.
Sweet.
He gets some credibility there.
And directed Annabelle Comes Home. I believe he directed the 3rd one.
That was the
most recent one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen
I think that's the one he directed, and that's his only directing credit right now. So it'd be interesting to see like what they do with this new version of Salem's Lot. But continuing from Salem's Lot, you've mentioned the Night Shift collection. Have you ever read One for the Road?
One for the Road?
Yeah.
I may have read it, but I forgot about the premise of it. It's been a while since I've read all the stories, but there's certain stories I still go back to within it. But it's probably been about a good year since I've flipped through it.
All right. So One for the Road takes place a couple years after Salem's Lot. And it's like the surrounding towns, they just know you don't go near Salem's Lot. And so it's one winter night, just this blizzard is just coming down. Wind is howling. It is freezing cold. There's this guy at a bar, and he's just having like one last drink with the bartender before they close up for the night. And as they're getting ready to close down, this guy just bursts through the door, just like chilled, near, like if he had been outside 15 more minutes, he'd have frozen to death essentially. And basically, he was driving with his wife and 7-year-old daughter, and their car breaks down right outside of Salem's Lot. And so basically they they drive out there trying to find his car, and they go out there in the cold, pitch dark, wind chill, -100 probably, just trying to find his wife and daughter because they're no longer in the car. And let's just say the vampires got them, and it is creepy. Like Stephen King, as good of a writer he can really get into being overly descriptive, where it's like he looked at the clock and the clock was in the family for generations, bought by his great 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 grandfather and passed down. Like he can get into that kind of thing sometimes.
Yeah, that's his style. He's very descriptive, and sometimes he goes off the deep end with that, and it makes you want to skip the couple pages ahead to get back to the content. But
yeah, but
sometimes the details help.
It's just pure. He just goes for it, and it is just a very intense, like 30 or 40, however long it is, and it is a story. I'll say that it gets creepy.
Dude, my Nana has said multiple times, she's like, yeah, with reading Stephen King, she can. It's like, I can't tell you how many times, Marco, that I've said, Steve, just get to the fucking point. You know, on and on with this bullshit. You can tell my Nana's very Italian. Just on and on with the bullshit about the clock and how it was made and where the crack came from. Jesus, get back to the fucking story. The one thing I have said about Stephen King many times, and I'll say it again. That man has done horrible things for the tourism of the state of Maine. I feel terrible for the people who work in the tourism office of Maine. Them trying to explain that Maine really isn't that bad must be very difficult, considering how much Stephen King has shit on it.
I feel like he would have done more help for the tourism of Maine than anything, because if you didn't have Stephen King, what would you know Maine for?
Lobster.
Woods, moose, elks.
Wait,
A lot
of beautiful scenery.
A lot of that. Yeah, we'll drive through, but we won't stay the night. I've read a Stephen King novel.
But also, I think you're also underestimating just how sick people actually are in their heads. So they'd want to see the place where Stephen King writes all of his monsters.
But to all defense, Maine has the least crime of any state. I've read that, by demographics, Maine is probably one of the safest states, relatively speaking, considering by population and by area. And they say certain states that are very cold, are more prone to high crime and, heavy alcoholism and drugs and murder and robbery. Maine actually is one of the few states that's, defies those odds and, has a lesser amount of that.
Well, Rabbit's real tough to arrest a vampire or a ghost.
That is very true.
Dracula, get in the back of the car. Hey, I'm having a little trouble handcuffing the ghosts. Well, no shit. That
would be an interesting story. Just a cop trying to arrest Dracula, and then they got to get immigration involved.
You motherfucker, you better behave, otherwise I'm calling ICE.
Or how about the demon from Storm of the Century, Lanoge, who can shapeshift to any character he wants, or just disappear at any time. With that long cane with the snake dragon looking creature on the end of it that had eyes that moved and like sort of morphed into different things.
And actually, Mark and Zach James, who we interviewed a while back from the Horror and Sci-Fi Prop Preservation Association, he actually just got that cane. Just today, he posted a picture of it, and it was an actual animatronic cane. And we just left Mark, so I think that means his family obligation finally took hold.
No, I think it's off the video feed.
But man, Storm of the Century, like that creeped me out, especially the one line that was repeated several times, like "I will eat your eyes out" over and over. After all, hell is all about repetition. That just like was amazing.
Yeah, I actually have not seen Storm of the Century since my freshman or sophomore year of high school. I don't remember any lines. I just remember the cane, and I remember the end when they made the one guy give up his son.
Yes.
Yeah, like that whole ending has still stayed with me.
It was dark as hell, and after that he gave his child up. He divorced his wife, and then shows the aftermath where he left his wife. And then he sees his son walking, and his son turns, and he gives like the evil eye, where he knows it's the face of his son, but it's a different soul, a different psyche. So it shows you that he's now possessed in the hands of Lanoge.
That was a good one. That's actually by the same director as Rose Red, which that's another one I haven't seen.
I haven't seen that in forever.
I haven't seen it since it first aired.
Like on TV?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like that was the last time I actually watched it. I remember there was like all the what was it, on ABC?
I only saw it on DVD. So.
Yeah, I think it aired on ABC, and I remember they were making all this big deal about it, and that's where I saw it. And I can barely remember that movie or show, whatever. What was it, like 3 parts?
It's like a 2 or 3 part miniseries.
I think it was 3 parts.
Mhm.
I do
Yeah,
think
it was several parts.
Yeah.
Another one that I really liked a lot was 1922. It wasn't really horror, but it was really interesting. It's a guy he lives out on a farm. He kills his wife to try to collect inherit the inheritance, and it just after that everything just backfires and it just leads to a downward spiral for him.
Yeah, it's I actually watched that one. I downloaded onto basically my mother gave me her iPad when I was working on my second cruise ship. And I downloaded it onto via Netflix to watch it. So it's like I remember enjoying it, but it's one of those movies I've wanted to return to because, working on the cruise ship towards the end of my contract, it's to the point where my brain was starting to be affected in certain ways. So I do want to return to 1922 and watch it and actually give it the due it deserves. But
yeah, it's a movie that you want to watch a couple times because the story is kind of dense and it's not really scary or gory, but it's more psychologically distressing to see how a person who thinks that he's could double cross his family and just obtain everything for his own personal gain, and it just completely falls out of his grip and he just spirals down into complete oblivion.
Yeah, of the 3 Stephen King Netflix movies, I would say that's probably the middle one for me. The top one being Gerald's Game, which
That
is
was
really good.
brilliant.
Yeah, and
Brilliant.
at the bottom, In the Tall Grass.
Well, you didn't like In the Tall Grass?
I did not care for In the Tall
I
Grass.
thought it was a fun movie. I didn't hate it.
I didn't hate it, but I don't care for it.
It's interesting because Gerald's Game, I first watched it and I didn't like it. I thought it was very slow and very boring. But then I watched it again a second time and it just something compelled me to watch it again. And the more I watched it, I felt connected to the story. It was definitely more of a metaphorical story of infidelity and failed relationships and how that manifested into something much greater and much darker, like the dog that came in the room and just bit the living people, but it really wasn't there. It's pretty bizarre.
Yeah, that was a really good one. But yeah, the 3 movies I watched in prep for this podcast were Salem's Lot, Misery, and then the other one I watched, I wanted to make sure I watched something that I'd never seen before. And so I watched Secret Window.
That's one I've never seen.
I don't think I've even heard of it.
It's the Stephen King movie I always forget is the Stephen King movie because it doesn't feel like Stephen King. But basically, Johnny Depp plays an author. Yeah, he plays a writer in a Stephen King story. I know. But he plays a writer who's going through a divorce. He's staying out at his cabin, just away from everything. And then one day, this guy knocks on his door, played by John Turturro, and he's claiming that Johnny Depp plagiarized his story.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was really good. It was a really solid thriller. It had a much more relaxed tone than you would expect from a Stephen King movie, especially from a studio-produced Stephen King movie. But yeah, Johnny Depp gives a much more toned-down performance than you usually expect from him. Yeah, it's really good. Just the way that he's trying to prove to this guy, I did not steal your story. Maria Bello plays Johnny Depp's soon-to-be ex-wife. She needs more work because I think she's a fantastic actress. But yeah, if you've never seen it, I do recommend it. The only thing I didn't like about it was there's a reveal at the end that just kind of fell flat for me. And I was kind of planning on talking about it in more detail if you guys had seen the movie, or at least if one of you had seen the movie. But since neither of you have seen it, I kind of don't want to now because I don't want to spoil it for you guys.
Spoilers.
Cool.
That's just an excuse to bring it back for another Stephen King discussion later on.
Definitely. Well, the thing is, too, that Stephen King has just so much output. He has so many movies, and it's hard to pick because he has such a wide range of films ranging from drama to psychological thriller to really scary horror to films that are completely not in his vein but are still by him, like The Shawshank Redemption, for example, which is a phenomenal film.
One of the greatest movies ever made. You ever read the original story?
Mm-mm.
It's okay. it's like the movie's better. Like it's one of those times where I'll say the movie is by far the superior version. Um, the movie goes a lot more into the corruption of the prison because in the book there's more than one warden. Like one warden retires, another comes in. Whereas in the movie, it's that one corrupt guy from beginning to end of the story. I think they did more with the friendship between Andy and Red. Like the story almost feels like just a Cliff Notes version of the movie.
Maybe a blueprint, perhaps, like
Yeah.
something maybe like he wanted to have that, and then someone took and adapted it into a larger, more dense, like a screenplay that eventually became the masterpiece that it was.
Creepshow is another one that I really like. That's
Creepshow is great. Creepshow 2 and Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, which was supposed to be Creepshow 3.
Yep. Not the actual Creepshow 3, which
that,
is not
that never happened.
In my no, it's just
never happened.
You can't even find it anywhere anymore except on YouTube.
I had a copy of it and I just threw it out. It was that bad.
Yeah, actually, our friend Justin, back when it first came out on DVD, he saw it and he's like, "Oh, there's a Creepshow 3? I didn't know that." He bought it. He has since sold it.
It's just that horrible.
It is terrible. Like, it's not even fun bad. It's just bad. It's insulting bad.
It's more like what the fuck is happening bad.
Yeah, it's not even what the fuck kind of like this is a stoner movie bad. This is just bullshit.
Humans made this somehow. An actual person made it and signed off on it as I approve of this having my name on it.
Now back to Creepshow 1 though. What's the favorite segment of yours? If you had to pick your favorite segment,
probably the last one with all the cockroaches.
You're creeping up. Oh yeah, that was amazing.
I like all of them, but that one is always. It's always just had a we've saved the best for last feel to it.
Oh, he got what he friggin' deserved too.
Oh. And plus the actual moment where the cockroaches are bursting out of his chest and everything, that was awesome.
That was amazing.
Have you ever watched Just Desserts, which is like the feature-length documentary about the making of Creepshow?
I've seen parts of the thing where they said they came in with these huge barrels of cockroaches and they just dumped them in, and they just were getting out of control.
Yeah, and they also gave the roaches their own trailer.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And then I wonder if they took the same roaches years later and made the movie Joe's Apartment with them.
Ooh, I did not wake up today thinking we get a Joe's Apartment reference.
Imagine working with live roaches.
I don't want to.
Like, how do you clean that up? That's my question. Like, what do you do? Like, after you're done with them, do you just try to? All right, let's get them back in the barrels. Come on, store them before they infest. And now there's an infestation. Fuck!
And then you gotta bomb the room for like a month with like intense chemicals, so intense that if you step inside, your lungs are probably gonna collapse.
Yeah, it's like standing into that one basement in Chernobyl. It's like, and you're dead.
Yep.
Yeah, Creepshow is a great one. Have you ever seen Cat's Eye?
Cat's Eye, yes.
Yeah, I saw that one when I was in middle school, and I did order a couple Stephen King Blu-rays that were on the cheap on Amazon in the hopes that they would get here in time to watch and prep for this. But in a cruel twist of fate, they're going to arrive tomorrow, and Cat's Eye is one of them. But I do remember really enjoying it. The two stories it was based on, The Ledge and Quitters Incorporated. I don't know if
Quitters Incorporated, it's amazing.
Yeah. Those were two really vivid short stories. And while I think the movie took a more humorous route with them, I still think they did a good job with it.
Oh, yeah.
The Ledge to this day, it's like, I'm afraid of heights. And some of the descriptions in that short story are just like, ugh, no.
Yeah.
If you're not afraid of heights, I'd think, ugh, no.
Yeah, it still takes you back. Like you're just like, fuck this.
I'm just kind of going through the list of Stephen King movies here, seeing if there's anything else I want to bring
up.
Oh,
Children of the Corn.
Love the short story. I did not like the first movie, but I understand the appeal of it. And then I also saw I think it was the 2009 remake of it, and that's
Didn't
one of
see
the worst things I've ever seen.
Now, there's a short film on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Disciples of the Crow, which is a blueprint of
I've
it's
always
sort of
known about that, but I've never actually seen it.
it's creepy. I was introduced to it by a Facebook friend yesterday, and he was like, "Check these out. It's so much better than the movie. It's only about 20 minutes." I watched it, and I was just like, "Holy shit!" It's split up into two segments, like a 9-minute segment for the first, and the next one's like another 9 or 10 minutes. But it's certainly worth it, and it takes that less is more approach. It's very creepy. It has all the settings of like the church and all the demonic imagery that sort of swells in and out, the cornfields. It's certainly worth your watch. Disciples of the Crow.
Like I've always seen it on the Stephen King IMDb page, and I've always kind of been curious, what is this? Because even though it is listed as a short from 1984, like this is before like literally everybody and their dog was making short films based off of short stories. Like his IMDb page is like 342 movies long because of all those independent short films. So it's like it's kind of hard to separate what's real, what isn't, what's crap, what isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that one. And then, of course, we talked about Dr. Sleep. And so with that, I don't think we've gotten any of Zach's picks yet. So let's
open the Zach picks.
Let's make Zach talk.
Oh, I don't want to talk. I don't like talking. All right, fine. My number one pick is The Running Man. Have any of you ever seen that movie?
Once.
A long time ago, and I had no idea it was a Stephen King movie.
Yeah, neither did I until we were talking one day, and he's just going down the list. He's just like, this, The Running Man. I'm like, hang on, what?
Yeah, it was actually based on a book from his Richard Bachman days. He had that pseudonym, Richard Bachman. The Running Man was one of those books. Thinner was one of those books. The Long Walk was another one. Rage, which we won't talk about. I feel like there was another one that's escaping me right now. But yeah, there was like 4 or 5 books that he wrote under the pseudonym Richard Bachman, and The Running Man was one of them.
Yeah, The Running Man is just this over-the-top, ridiculous Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie, of course. And I fucking love it. Essentially, Schwarzenegger starts off, he's in a helicopter with, he's part of like this military force or police force.
He always is.
And the government wants him to fire on these protesters, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. To hell with you. And the other guys are just like, all right, knock him out. They proceed to kill all the protesters and then frame him for it to make him look like an asshole, throw him in jail. Yep. He escapes from jail, and then inevitably gets caught again, and now he's thrown into this game show called The Running Man. And this game show, you essentially, it's like a fight to the death arena battle. You're thrown into these random situations, and you have to fight for your life. But because he's like this military expert, Arnold fucking Schwarzenegger, he continues to kill and beat the shit out of all these fucking guys with his kick-ass one-liners and everything. And it's just one hell of a time with a great 80s synth soundtrack, and I fully recommend it. It is beautiful. It is great. God, you need to watch it.
The golden era of Arnold Schwarzenegger right there. We had Terminator, The Predator, The Running Man, and then all of a sudden you have Kindergarten Cop.
I still love those movies. They're ridiculous, but I love them. I would say Arnold Schwarzenegger before Terminator 3, maybe? Was that the last one? I don't know. Yeah. Everything before Terminator 3, I can watch and love. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. There's just something about Schwarzenegger that's just awesome. Yep. Everything after that, it's like,
That actually reminds me. Do you have Escape Plan?
Escape Plan? Yeah. No, not yet, but I do want to get it. Okay. I believe it's a lot cheaper now, so I do plan on getting it. Escape Plan was good. I would love to see him and Stallone do more movies than just Expendables and that. I want just one more. One more just straight up big action movie. I don't care what it is. Make it a monster movie. Make it something, but I need those two in a movie together at least one more time before they pass. Please don't die. Corona, do not kill these men!
Well, I mean, Schwarzenegger's safe in his hot tub and cigars, so...
Yeah.
With his donkey, which I find hilarious. But yeah, other than that, let's see. The Mangler is another one I do love, if we're not going to go with it and Shining and Dr. Sleep. Mangler is just, it's so fucking hilarious and stupid that I just love it. And Robert Englund is hysterical. Buffalo Bill is this raging alcoholic.
Have you ever seen the sequels?
Wait, there's sequels?
Oh boy. Okay.
Oh dear.
Zach and Rob, strap in for this one because we're going for a ride.
How many sequels?
I'm ready.
There are two, but there's really only one worth mentioning for this conversation. So these movies do not have Stephen King's name on them.
Clearly.
The first sequel, The Mangler 2, Lance Henriksen plays like the dean of a private school that gets a new high-tech computerized security system
Oh boy.
Okay.
that somehow downloads into itself the Mangler 2.0 virus. I am not making this up. The security system then goes evil and basically starts basically it's a killer school.
So I have a question. What does the security system entail? Are there like sentry turrets placed in like corners of the rooms where you can just open fire on people?
I think so, actually.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Like I never saw the full movie. I just saw the trailer.
You
And
have
that was
sentry
it.
turrets in a what is it? A middle school, elementary school, high school?
I only
college?
ever saw the trailer.
Oh,
but
okay. So you haven't seen the movie.
It's from what I understand. If you've seen the trailer, you've pretty much seen the movie.
The Mangler virus. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and then it takes over Lance Henriksen's body, so he has like all these cables coming out of his face. And everything.
Oh man.
And it became virus. Okay, cool. It was virus before. Wait, what came out first? Virus or this?
Let me find out for you.
My God.
Virus with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes.
That was 1999,
Okay.
and then Mangler 2 was 2002.
Okay, so virus came out first. So yeah, it's a ripoff of the virus.
A whopping 2.5 out of 10 on IMDb. It's actually gone up since I first learned about this movie in middle school. This got like a 1.9 or something like that.
Well, looks like some people like it.
Yeah, a teenager girl mistakenly downloads the Mangler 2.0 computer virus into her high school's new state-of-the-art computer system, and all hell breaks loose.
Oh man.
We
There was another sequel.
Yeah, The Mangler Reborn.
Oh Jesus.
Starring Reggie Bannister of Phantasm fame.
Oh wow.
He plays a guy who pretty much finds the parts from the original Mangler possessed laundry press, and basically it starts talking to him, and he has to find people to feed to the Mangler.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, I mean, Scream Factory has released the first Mangler on Blu-ray, and from what I understand from Justin, who actually bought it, the transfer is amazing. So let's do hashtag release the Mangler trilogy. No.
No, but the first one. The first one is fun. You know, that's the best way I can describe it. It is absolute fun. Everything else, maybe I don't know. I'm gonna leave those two alone for right now.
I do kind of want to look up Mangler 2 to see how bad it is.
I'm sure you do.
From what I understand, though, the DVD release from back in the day had a glitch in it that there's just I think it just randomly skips over like a minute of it, like halfway through.
Did it download the Mangler virus?
I guess so.
Jesus Christ.
Because like do you remember like back in the days of DVD where it's like you had the dual layer discs, and like when the laser's like switching layers, there's like that slight pause that you get when you're watching a DVD. Do you guys remember?
Yeah.
So it's like, from what I understand, it's with the Mangler 2, when it hit that, instead of just continuing, it would just like randomly skip over the next minute that it was supposed to.
That's lovely.
That's a pain in the ass.
Well, I mean, you get done with the Mangler 2 a minute faster, so is it really all that?
Good point.
I guess depending on your point of view, I don't know.
So yeah, you picked the Running Man. What else you got? Oh, and the Mangler.
Yeah, Running Man, Mangler. 1408 I thought was a pretty good one.
1408 was solid.
Yeah, visuals were pretty damn good. The story itself, I mean, you're working with just a haunted hotel room, so I thought it was very well executed. I've never read the original story. In fact, the only Stephen King story I've ever actually read is The Jaunt. Anybody read that one?
The Jaunt? Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe I'm the one that told you about it.
Yeah, you were. It's actually pretty good. But yeah, 1408, I thought it had a lot of great visuals. The story was pretty good. And which ending do you guys prefer? Just out of curiosity, because if I remember correctly, there was 3 endings.
For 1408?
Yeah.
I only ever saw the movie in theaters when it first came out. I have not seen it since.
I've only seen it on DVD, so I saw the director's cut.
I think I saw the director's cut, or I only saw one ending though. What was the ending on the director's cut?
So the one in the director's cut, what's his name? John Cusack's character dies. They go to his funeral and everything. Samuel Jackson's character shows up. As he gets in his car, he looks in his rearview mirror, and his character's like kind of there, just burnt up to a crisp in the back or whatever, and it just kind of cuts off there.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's it. That's the one I saw.
I saw.
Yeah, I believe the theatrical ending is he actually escapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
That's
then
the end.
there's I remember hearing there was a third ending, but I can't remember what it was. I think he, I don't know. I believe he might just kill himself, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah.
I need to rewatch it. Like, I remember thinking it started good, but it just kind of lost me towards the end. But enough people like it that I've always been meaning to return to it, to give it a second shot. But I do remember that was also the same year that The Mist came out, and I really liked The Mist.
That's a movie I saw parts and clips of. Like I saw a good chunk of it, like from like almost to the end, because I just found it on. It was one of those things where I saw it and I was like, I don't want to spoil it, but I just couldn't help but watch the rest of the movie. And then I watched the ending and I saw the very last scene where the guy just kills his whole family, and then he sees the army troops come and he sees all the tanks come to destroy the monsters, and he just like, fuck, I just killed my whole family, and he's like freaking out, screaming and crying. Damn. I have to watch the whole thing from the beginning now because I feel like that's one movie I should really watch.
Yeah, it's really good. It's definitely up there for Stephen King movies for me. There are actually two versions. There's a color version, and then on DVD and Blu-ray, they also included a black and white version. And it does actually work better in black and white. Because I guess Frank Darabont did want it in black and white, but it's 2007. You're not going to make money with the black and white movie, so the compromise was they let him put the black and white version on the DVD.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, those are essentially for my favorite Stephen King movies.
Cool. Yeah, I think I don't know. There's so many movies I have seen, and there's so many I haven't seen, but it's just tough because he has, like I said, he's got like a huge body of work, and it's not like I mean, John Carpenter has a lot of works out. I mean, Clive Barker's got a lot of works, but I mean, Stephen King is just massive across the spectrum.
It's like gargantuan.
He probably wrote a 1,000-page novel while we were recording this over the last hour and a half. Today, he probably wrote something.
Yeah.
And he's also wrote comics before. He's written screenplays, as we've discussed some of them earlier.
He's done a lot.
He's done a lot.
Yeah, he keeps himself entertained, so
yeah,
no complaints.
And he's got the talent too. He's got like massive talent, and he has a knack for what he does. And whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny that he's got incredible talent.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, let's conclude with this. If you had to, I know you put Pet Sematary at the top for movies. It does sound like you've read quite a bit of his actual written work. What would you put at the top of your list for his written work? And you don't have to choose just one. You can choose a few favorites if you want.
I really liked reading Salem's Lot. I really liked reading Cujo. I also liked the book Insomnia. That was like one of the first books I read when I was 13 or 14, and that was really well done as a book. And I'm actually surprised that there wasn't a big feature, like big budget movie with Insomnia that was released in contemporary times, because I feel like that would be really well done.
Yeah.
And I also liked Bag of Bones. It was okay. I mean, it wasn't my favorite of the bunch, but it's great. I have a soft spot for it. I like the story of it, and it's something a little different.
All right. For Cujo, did you ever see the movie?
That's another one with like Salem's Lot. Like I've seen parts of Salem's Lot, and I've seen parts of it, but I've read the book first, and I like the book a lot. So
yeah, I will say I do think Cujo is a movie that could be remade. Like, on one hand, it's really impressive that they were able to get a dog on film looking like it's doing the things that it's doing. So it's really impressive from a technical standpoint. But much like with Pet Sematary, the child actor in that one just kills it for me.
Yeah.
And they do a complete 180 from the ending from the book, whereas the kid dies in the book, he lives in the movie. So it's Cujo is one that I think could be remade. It's just a matter of, does somebody want to remake it, and do they actually want to do a good job at it? Because at one point there was supposed to be like some kind of Cujo remake where Cujo stood for some sort of robotic dog police task force, and it's like, what is this?
Yeah, it's like it takes away from the original plot and the original meaning of it, and it sort of makes it more goofy instead of how it originally was when it was really unsettling and really off-putting.
Yeah, and it's like a dog getting rabies. That could happen. That's what makes it so
Absolutely.
scary. Is this story could happen?
Yep.
And then Bag of Bones is one that's always been on my list, but I've never gotten around to reading. Never saw the miniseries either with Pierce Brosnan. I heard it was okay.
Me, Wes, and a bunch of his friends watched it, and we just kept. We did this on Halloween once, and we just kept sitting there going, "What the fuck is happening?" It's a very confusing and just weird thing where you're just like, "Why are you doing this? This is so pointless." Yeah, it was random. Fun time if you have a group, but I wouldn't sit there and watch it alone. It probably would have been quite boring. There was one point where Zeus was going to come down from the heavens and start fucking with people. It's like, what?
Like, literally?
Yeah. I don't know why we thought that, but who knows?
I feel like for certain stories, they'll work better in literature context or in literary context than they do in movies. Like sometimes you read it and it gives you more room for your imagination to think and to process different events and apparitions. But then when you see it in person, it's more one-dimensional. You're just kind of like, not how I pictured it, and it's just a little more in your face. And sometimes if it's not executed well, it just becomes bland.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Zach, any final thoughts from you?
Squirrels.
And Brandon, any final thoughts from you? Yeah, actually, I'm surprised we didn't talk about I didn't talk about The Stand as much as I thought I would, because I do really like The Stand. I think the book is really good. I thought Marvel's graphic novel adaptation was really good, and as dated as the 1990s miniseries is, I still think it's pretty good. And I didn't watch the full miniseries in prep for this because I had the Blu-ray coming in, but I did rewatch the opening moments of like all the dead people in the military compound and Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reapers playing. It's probably one of the most chilling scenes in the Stephen King miniseries. So yeah, if you haven't read or seen The Stand, I recommend it. Maybe after the whole coronavirus thing has blown over.
You could literally do an entire segment on The Stand itself because I mean there's probably so much depth to it. Not to mention there's a lot of work to it, and the movie itself is 350 something minutes long. If you put it in one setting.
Series.
Holy shit.
Depending on which version of the book you get, because there is the original version, which is like 700 or 800 pages, and then there's an expanded version that's the more common one that you can find today that's like 1,000 or 1,100 pages around there. It's like that thick, and I've got the hardcover collection of the graphic novel. That's a tome all of its own. It's a hefty story. I think it may actually be the expanded version may actually be his longest work. I think it beat out it by just a couple hundred words.
Wow.
Yeah. It is massive. But good.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And CBS All Access was actually in the midst of filming a new 10-part miniseries based on it.
Nice.
And, of course, as we all know, film production everywhere has been shut down. So who knows when we're going to see it. I'm sure their marketing department's having a fun time thinking about, okay, so we're going through the coronavirus right now. How are we going to market The Stand, where the whole world gets killed off by a virus?
Yeah, and to do it in a way that doesn't trigger a lot of people to get very angry or very upset or very offended by it to the point where there's massive protesting and rioting or massive social media shaming over the film.
But I mean, one advantage they do have is it is CBS All Access, and does anybody actually care about anything that's on CBS All Access?
Maybe not.
And I watched the new Twilight Zone recently. It was
How is it?
A very, very mixed bag is what I'll call it.
Mm.
It obviously doesn't come anywhere close to how good the original was, but I mean, it never had a chance. Nothing ever has a chance of living up to that. but I thought as a whole it suffered from a lot of it felt like too many cooks in the kitchen. Like it's like it's like everybody on the creative team was never on the same page on this is what this story is going to be about.
That sucks when that happens, because when you have a great idea and it's corrupted by several people that try to interject their own input and their own ideas, then it just becomes like a mishmash of ideas where it's like you're putting 5 skits into one show instead of having just one consistent show.
Like there was one episode where it's just like, because like even the original Twilight Zone was not very subtle, but you know exactly what the lessons to take away from those episodes are. You know what it's about. Whereas this new one, there are episodes where it's like the episode's about one thing, and then it gets to the ending, and it's like, oh, so that's what this was about. And then the ending narration comes in and is about a different theme. So it's like, oh, so that's what this was about.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
And then it takes the fun anticipation out of it, and it becomes more like and then you don't really get excited to watch it again, and you're just probably left there like disappointed or just left empty.
Yeah. There were a couple that were good. But a lot of it comes down to is how much do you want a CBS All Access account?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, if you have a free trial, it's probably worth a look just for the ones that are decent, but there are some bad ones in there.
Now,
yeah, I do kind of want to end this conversation on a positive note rather than a negative note.
No, I totally hear you. I think Stephen King's movies, though, I think they always leave the door open for extra interpretation as to what happened, and they also give a different lesson for each film, as well as different metaphors that might be relevant to those watching the films in that contemporary time frame that the film was either made in or the time it represented.
Yeah. Oh, we lost Mark, so we didn't get his question of the podcast. Zach, you said you've only read one of his stories, so you kind of have your answer already by default. And Rob, I think you already answered this as well with Insomnia. But is there a Stephen King story that you think should be adapted into a movie or TV show that hasn't yet?
I think Insomnia, definitely. I'd love to see Insomnia. That's one that's been on my mind for a long time, and I've always wondered why they haven't done something with that one, because it was one of the first works I've read when I was in, I think, 6th or 7th grade, and I even did a report on it and got like an A+ on it. That's how much I loved it.
Nice.
Yeah, I just thought the jaunt was a very interesting concept, and I haven't seen anything like that put into film or just video for that matter. So I would love to see that be turned into a movie.
Yeah. For me, there are a lot of stories from the Night Shift that I really liked that haven't been turned into movies yet. I do wish we got George A. Romero's version of The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, but we're never going to get that now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The Monkey is a short story that I really liked. That's in the Skeleton Crew collection. There was another, 10 O'Clock People was a good one. But if there's one that I've always wanted to see, it's the short story Survivor Type, which that was originally going to be the pilot for the recent Creepshow series, but they decided to do Gray Matter instead. And I thought overall they did a good job with it.
Maybe season 2.
Maybe season 2. But it's about this guy who is in a plane crash. He's stuck on an island, and in order to survive, he basically has to eat himself.
Gruesome.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. There have been like independent short films based on it, but there has yet to be like an official adaptation of it, and that's one that I think would be really gruesome and visually good.
A nice paradox: to eat yourself in order to survive. That's a paradox and a half right there.
That's fucking rough too, but I believe somebody I remember looking up if that was actually a valuable option to do if you were in a survival situation like that. It's not. Don't do it. Like they're you'll just kill yourself faster if you try eating yourself.
Oh yeah, he kind of learns that eventually in the story.
Way. Yeah, self cannibalism. It's like we'll part does he cut? Where does he start?
I believe it was his foot.
Oh,
Where did I start? Maybe the thigh. I don't know. Not the foot, because I need that for walking. Because
Oh,
you can't
man.
walk on the road. You're literally
like,
shooting yourself in the foot with
It's
that.
been a long time
Yep.
since I read the story, but I think what made him go with the foot was I think it got injured or something, so his foot was gone anyway.
I guess.
Because I mean, you're in a plane crash, you're bound to land with a couple of bumps and bruises somewhere.
No, you'll land in perfect condition. It's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, Survivor type. That's probably my pick. Hopefully, Creep Show season 2 does it. There was actually a little Easter egg in one of the episodes. I don't know if you've seen the new Creep Show series.
I haven't yet.
Really good. Some are kind of okay. There's only one that I didn't like, but most of them are actually very strong. So I highly recommend it. But there is one episode where it's like you see some comic books like sort of like blowing in the wind outside, and one of them has a cover of a guy on an island, and I'm just like, I haven't gone back to actually pause it and really look at it, but I'm just like, I bet that's a nod to the fact that we're gonna do Survivor type at one point.
Excuse me.
So with that, Rob, thank you once again for joining us
You're
on this
welcome.
podcast. It was a pleasure.
You're very welcome. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on again. I had a great time in an in-depth discussion with all the Stephen King works, movies, and literature.
And yeah, I feel like we barely scratched the surface, and that just shows how much Stephen King work exists.
Yes.
There's so much.
It's multiplying.
But it's still fun. It's such a fun subject to tackle because he's definitely one of the most inspirational horror authors of the 20th century.
Yeah, and who knows? There's so much. We may do a Stephen King part 2 later down the line. If we do that, we'd love to have you again as sort of like our go-to Stephen King go-to guy. Kind of.
I'm absolutely down for that. I'm completely 100% down for that.
All right. Before we sign off, any social media that you want to plug? Where can the people find you?
You can find me at Cucurbitophobia.com. You could also find Cucurbitophobia on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Bandcamp. And I have some new material in the works for this Halloween. So visit Cucurbitophobia.com for more information on that.
Yep. And yeah, I got some of the Bandcamp emails recently. So you're keeping busy, and I'm glad you are.
Thank you very much. You guys are doing great, and I'll be more than happy to continue to spread the word and spread the horror out there.
Nice.
Thank you very much, sir.
And then from us at the Nightmares Podcast, you can find us at Midwest Horror Network on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and
Slasher.
Nice. All right. That's it from us to you all for now. Stay safe out there, and
thank you very much. You too.
Listening.
All right. Have a great night.